continuing on with the Protist groups, we're going to go through a big super group called SAR. These are photosynthetic, generally speaking, or phagocytes. You might recall from Core 1 what that means is that they engulf things. And they may have been, some of these may have been what endosymbionts, creating the eukaryote organisms with photosynthetic parts. All right, so we're going to go through each one of these, but if you can take a second and just stop the video and take all these notes, then as we go through, you can add things that we talk about. All right, so let's just go through these. So the kingdom alveolata, they have a membrane-bound sac that is beneath their outer membrane or their cell membrane. They don't really know what they're for. They're probably for osmoregulation. This is a picture in your textbook of these, and it's kind of showing you the membrane-bound sac beneath the outer membrane here, all right? So the first phyla that we're going to talk about is dinoflagellates, and you probably have heard of these before because they are the symbionts with corals, and they give corals their color. Coral bleaching would be caused by these dinoflagellates dying, usually because they're like covered over with sediments or something like that from boat traffic and that sort of thing, which or they may be ill affected by warm waters or changes in pH. So this has been kind of in the news a lot lately, so you might have heard about them before. So dinoflagellates are marine, or they can be freshwater, and they're called, they're photosynthetic, and they're called phytoplankton. Phytoplankton is just kind of a general name given to photosynthetic, well, actually any unicellular or small organisms that are in the surface of the ocean or freshwater, but a lot of times they're photosynthetic. And these guys are, I already said they're unicellular. They have cellulose plates, and those cellulose plates give them characteristic shapes. So if you were to look up dinoflagellates, and you should Google them, but I also have a PowerPoint. I'll talk about that at the end. Anyway, they have some characteristic shapes. They have two flagella in the groove between the plates. And these guys, some examples of these are red tide, where the red tide is, they have carotenoids, you know, red colors in the cells. And the toxins that they produce just via their regular metabolism will kill the fish around them. So as the red tide progresses, it will, you know, kill a bunch of fish. You probably have seen that before. Usually this is temperature changes in the water that cause these guys to get going. The coral symbionts, which I already talked about, or bioluminescence, which you might have seen at the beach. If you're walking up the beach, you might have seen it in the waves or when you're walking on the sand. Bioluminescence is thought to attract predators because the organisms that have these generally are phagocytes. So they attract things that come in there, and then they engulf materials either that the like a fish would eat, you know, leftover stuff that they would eat, or other organisms that are really small that come in that they can actually eat. The ATP chemical reaction is caused by the movement of something. I once went to a bioluminescent kind of lake that was in Puerto Rico, and as you paddled, you could see the bioluminescence happening, and you could see the fish that were kind of around you escaping your boat, moving in the water. It was pretty cool. Anyway, the second phylum is apicomplexans. Apicomplexans are animal parasites. They have a plastid, these guys are non-photosynthetic, right? So they have a plastid for fatty acid synthesis, or for fatty acids, called an apicoplast, hence their name. They spread via something called a sporozoite, or zoites, these have a pointy end to them that they can penetrate the host cells, and some of them have very intricate life cycles. For example, malaria, let me just show this to you. This is in your textbook, but malaria has kind of an unusual life cycle. Part of it is in the mosquito and part of it is in humans. What happens in the mosquito is that the mosquito gets infected by a gamete. These gametes can be male or female, so generally speaking, they will get infected with both. And those male and female will join via fertilization, create a zygote, which will then create this oocyst that produces these sporozoites. The sporozoites then are injected, so it takes a little bit for this to develop within the mosquito. And as the mosquito bites somebody, they inject these sporozoites. Those travel through the body into the liver. They can travel through the tissue. They penetrate liver cells, and in the liver cells, they will form these merozoites, which are kind of a different shape. And this is through mitosis, and those will get in the blood. And then those are the ones that are then taken up by the mosquitoes. So as the mosquito bites you and sucks in the blood, they're going to get that. So slightly complex life cycle there. Okay, so another phylum in this group, Violata, are ciliates, and you probably remember seeing paramecium in the lab in Core 1. If you looked at pond water, you may have also seen Stentor or Bordetella. They're kind of larger unicellular organisms. They're pretty interesting looking. These guys all have cilia. A lot of them, most of them, have two or more nuclei. One's usually bigger than the other, called macro and micro. And they have contractile vacuoles. A lot of these guys are freshwater. And because of that, they have to get rid of water because they take on water, so they will squeeze it out. And you might remember seeing the food vacuoles of the carmine solution in the paramecium. They do endocytosis and engulf their food that they're going to eat. So this is an example of a phagocytotic organism. Okay. All right, so another kingdom is straminophiles. Straminophiles are referred to as straw hares. This is because they have one flagella that has hairy projections, and it's usually paired with another flagella that is not hairy. So they have two flagella, but one, it looks like more because of the hairy one. These guys have cellulose or silica oxide in their cell walls. They also have something called laminarin, which is a glucose polymer made through their photosynthetic process. So instead of starch, they're making laminarin. And there's several phyla here. One phyla you probably have heard of before is diatoms, or bacillolariophytes. Sorry, I'm horrible. All right, so these are unicellular algae. Also a phytoplankton. They have glass-like cell walls, and they have two parts that overlap, kind of like a shoebox. And these guys are very unusual looking too. And they reproduce asexually most of the time. Every now and then they will do sexual reproduction. And they may form cysts, which are encasings that keep them dormant for a long period of time. Some examples are diatomaceous earth. A lot of people use this as a nematode amendment to the soil. That is because the glass in their cell walls will, as the nematode eats it, will tear up their internal structures and kill the nematode, so it's good. They've also, the idea of the shoebox thing has been used in nanotechnology, and in fact, they just take out the parts of the diatom and put in something that they may be using to research nanotechnology with in the diatom's outer cell wall. Okay, another phylum is Cryosophyta, which is golden algae. These are unicellular or colonial. They're photosynthetic and phytoplankton as well. And they have yellow and brown carotenoids. They are biflagellated on one end, and they can also form cysts. And the last phyla in this group is phaeophytes. These are brown algae. They are multicellular, and marine, and they usually are found in temperate regions, and they have brown carotenoids. These resemble plants in structure, and they also have alternation of generations, which we'll talk about later, but that's kind of a plant feature. But otherwise not really related to plants in terms of internal parts, mainly the way they do photosynthesis, etc. Some examples are kelp, which you probably have heard of, kombu, which is an edible one, laminaria. Okay, so we're going to look at the structure of that. You'll see, it looks a lot like a plant. All right, so what is happening here is that it has the parts of this, which are the thallus, which is the part that looks like a, sorry, I'm trying to get I was going to write the words down, but I guess I won't. They have these hold fast. This whole thing is called a thallus. They have the thing called the hold fast down here. They have a stipe, which is basically kind of like a stem, and they have a blade, which is, this part would be like the leaf. All right, so it really does look like a plant. This, however, is, it's multicellular, but it doesn't have a vascular system or anything like a plant would have. All right, so these guys can do underneath this is kind of like a fern in a way. They have these little sporangia that will then do meiosis and create gametes. Those can do sexual reproduction and join and form so egg and sperm come together, and they will form a mature, like, gametophyte. This grows out, and these guys will produce what they call so it makes a zygote and then produces a sporophyte. This grows into the plant-like thing. So this would be the asexual part of the life cycle, and this is, of course, the sexual part of the life cycle. This is what is called alternation of generations. These structures that are multicellular are haploid, and these structures over here that are multicellular are diploid, hence the term alternation of generations. But we'll talk more about that concept later.